good.
Candy for her.
Okay.
Let me tell. All right. Video, we're good.
Yep.
Good evening. I'd like to call the Hebron Board of Education regular meeting of Thursday, June 9th, 2022 to order at 7:01 p.m. If we could do a roll call, starting with
Nicole Matthews, board member.
Alex Crawford.
Diana Morales, board member.
Amanda Veneziano, vice chair.
Heather Pettit, Chair.
Tom Barrett, Superintendent.
Ali Schmeisel, secretary.
Don Briere, Director of Educational Services.
Caitlin O'Leary, business manager.
And we have Dave McKenna, the Director of IT.
Michael Larkin, Principal, Hebron Elementary School.
Thank you. I see a lot of wonderful fabulous staff here. The Pledge of Allegiance. We all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right, Dr. Baird, retirement recognition.
All right, well, I'm going to call up, let's see, we're starting with Susan. So Susan, come on up, and Mr. Larkin. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Larkin.
All right, good evening. We are celebrating, even though I've been in a little bit of denial, we're still celebrating Mrs. Botaro's 32-year teaching career, which has been spent entirely here in Hebron. She started off as a half-time math specialist at Hebron Elementary School when both schools were still K-6 schools. Spent 23 years teaching first grade, looping between first and second grade for 6 of those years, moving over here to Gilead Hill when the school's grades were reconfigured. After 23 years in first grade, came back to Hebron Elementary School as a 4th grade teacher, and has spent the last 5 years as our reading specialist. Susan wrote that Hebron has been my home, and we are so glad that it has been. Congratulations on your retirement.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. You're welcome to say something. You don't have to say something, but I want to give everyone that opportunity.
No, it's true. We raised our family here. I've been here for 32 years. My kids have gone all through the system, and it's bittersweet leaving because it has been my home. But moving on to the next chapter. Thank you.
Yes, congratulations. Thank you,
Thank you.
for all your service. And all you do.
I'm gonna have Mr. Larkin stay up, and we'll bring up Mrs. Yerke.
I emailed and asked for a few things that I could say this evening, and in typical Mrs. Yerke fashion, she emailed back this beautiful lyrical email that I'm just going to read to you because it's far better than anything I could have come up with. So this is Mrs. Yerke's email. Prior to coming to Hebron, I taught for 7 years in Manchester. My favorite experience there was working with kindergarten students. 5 is a magical age where storybook characters still feel real. My daughter Katie and I both started school in Hebron on the very same day. She was a first grader in Mrs. Gavoni's class, and I began teaching 6th grade at HES. I remember being so nervous about formal observations that I would borrow the students in the class next door, which was Mr. Jones's class, and practice my entire lesson on those students to work out all the kinks before Mrs. Collins came through to observe. I feel incredibly lucky to have shared the Hebron Public School experience with my children as they move through both of the schools 1 grade level apart. Together, we shared band concerts, holiday sing-alongs, and having Grampy in as a guest for Veterans Day. I very much enjoyed being a mystery guest reader in their classrooms. I am forever grateful to this district and this community of educators who are a part of my children's learning journey and who I am honored to have taught alongside for 15 years. We too are honored to have taught alongside you.
Thank you.
I just have to
just say one thing for Mrs. Yerke. Thank you for everything. You're like my daughter's personal cheerleader.
Oh, thank you. It's so awesome. Thank you. All my pleasure.
All right, I'm going to ask Dr. Briere to come up and Maureen to come up.
Hey, everyone. Mrs. Duffy, here we go. Tonight, I have the pleasure of introducing Mrs. Maureen Duffy to the board. Probably not for the first time. Maureen has been in the field of education for just over 40 years, starting out as a speech and language pathologist for Windsor Public Schools. Over her career, Maureen has also offered her expertise as a speech and language consultant. Since that time, Maureen has been a part of the Hebron family, remaining a dedicated and student-centered educator for the past 26 years. As a speech and language pathologist, Mrs. Duffy has supported students across our grades, working across both Gilead Hill School and currently at Hebron Elementary School. Maureen remains a steadfast and reliable resource to all she interacts with. Families, colleagues, and students have all found Maureen's wisdom and support so valuable. Although she will leave large shoes to fill, we are excited for her next personal and professional steps. We are thrilled to welcome Maureen back this coming year in a part-time capacity, supporting our learners at both schools. We are even more excited for Maureen as she will welcome her first grandbaby in the fall. Congratulations. On behalf of our whole team, we congratulate you, Maureen, on a wonderful career, and thank you for all you have provided to our families and colleagues over the years. Congratulations.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, thank you.
All right, Mrs. Uriano and Mrs. Badira, come on up.
So I have the honor of recognizing Erin Madera, who is our library media specialist at GHS. Erin is completing her 30th year of teaching. 15 of those years were as a classroom teacher, and 15 years of that was as a library media specialist. Erin started her career at Shepherd Hill Elementary School in Plainfield, where she taught 4th grade for 6 years. She then taught in Westport for 6 years, teaching 5th grade for 1 year and 4th grade for 5 years. She then met and married her husband, moved back to Eastern Connecticut, and returned to Plainfield, where she taught 3rd grade for 3 years. At that point, Erin obtained her library media specialist certification and spent 9 years at Sterling Community School as their LMS before joining us here at GHS, where she's been for the last 6 years. She masterfully teaches our youngest students to love books, persevere when technology doesn't cooperate, and challenges them every year to read more than they ever thought possible. On a personal note, Erin is known for being the most helpful staff member in our school. She stops by the office every single day to see if there's a way that she can pitch in whenever we need her. And she is also known for always looking on the bright side of everything. And she will be greatly missed.
It's a little surreal to be standing here, because I remember just when I was starting out thinking, in 2022 I could retire, and all of a sudden it's here. I'm not quite sure how. And I just want to say thank you so much to Hebron for having me here for my last 6 years of my career. It's been amazing, and what a way to end it. I love it here, and I may be retiring, but I'm going to be coming back to volunteer. You can't get rid of me.
Dr. Jared, can I say one thing?
Yeah.
It's, every year, and now Heather's going to make me cry, so it's her fault if I cry, but every year we have retirements, and, it's always sad to see someone go, but this year, as I'm watching you, I can see, just Mrs. Pitaro working with Sam for reading, and Mrs. Yerke with Tim, and Mrs. Duffy, like when she got Sam, he couldn't put a lot of words together, and just really like how far everyone, and then, you know, with reading and the library, and everyone has contributed so much to our kids. So this is a really hard, it's a really hard goodbye, because these are huge gaps that this school is losing. So you guys are all amazing.
Oh, yes. Okay, let me get myself together here.
Don't cry.
Katie, Michael,
Over right in that spot, we've got some open space there.
okay.
Lock out the laminate.
Really good light outside right now.
You're not hiding. Yeah, he's trying his best, but still got him. All right. Thank you, everyone. Came out great.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you for coming.
Sorry, I'm hot mess tonight.
Okay. Thank you all. I'm not going to say anything else because I can't. So next on the agenda is the student liaison report, but I don't think we have that tonight because it's the end of the year and they're getting ready for that. So district of,
And retirees, you're welcome to stay. You're all about our academic update, but you don't have to. You are excused. And if you want your box, feel free to take your box for your apple.
Yeah.
And so district advancement update tonight is academics plus a little attendance for good measure. So I'm going to invite Dr. Briere, Mr. Larkin, and Mrs. Uriano to come up and present.
I'm going to move.
I'm going to move.
Oh, on the screen. Sun is bright over there. You can lean over. Yeah.
Okay, we're ready, Dave?
Absolutely, yep.
Okay. So tonight we have a lot of ground to cover and a few slides for each of those pieces of content. So I'm going to kick us off with an attendance update and a PE update, similar to what we did last spring. Then Mr. Larkin and Mrs. Uriano will take it from there around some student achievement and performance information. So attendance first. So just some big numbers for everyone to kind of wrap their heads around as we wind down this school year. The first slide really walks you through the statewide attendance rates. This is daily attendance rates. Durg C, as a reminder, is our comparable demographic districts to Hebron. And then you have Hebron there in the middle row. Then our neighbors, Marlboro and Andover. One trend that we already picked up on from this data is clearly there's some attendance concerns statewide and in our Durg. Hebron fared about average with our neighbors in our Durg. Seeing our daily attendance rate go down slightly to 95.6%, comparable to previous years. There's a slight downward trend there. I think, importantly, to compare it to the statewide and the neighbors and the Durg, we're all kind of in the same boat with some of these attendance notations this year. And our team is already kind of racking our brains around what that looks like and the implications that has for us in the coming year. There's a lot on this slide, a lot to kind of take in. The reason for that is we went all the way back to 2014, 2015, and updated some of the attendance data from this current year. We ran the numbers are real time, so we ran the data as of May 27th, 22. One of the biggest takeaways for us is just the sheer and raw number of absences. You'll see we're right around 5,000 absences for this year in comparison to last year, 3,000 absences. Also pronounced in our current SEL conversations with the deans in particular is around the range of absences. Chronically absent as a definition is 10% or more of the available school days students have been out of school. So that's how they coin a chronically absent student. So that second to last row there, the 46, we had 46 students chronically absent this year. Our chronically absent number coming in at 7.18%. They don't yet have the state numbers or the DERG numbers for our comparisons, so I'm curious to see what those do look like. But as of right now, the running theory is we're pretty much in line with the overall attendance challenges that we're seeing across the state and likely faring better than most statewide. So those are our attendance updates. Let's pause there if there's any questions or want to keep moving. Any? Sure.
So I'm assuming it's discussed with the state as well, right? Are they attributing it to anything? I know we said COVID before, but, you know, COVID was, I'm not saying worse, but, you know, maybe more prevalent like a year ago. So is that it? Is it the mental health days, which I think we need and we want, but I mean, those are extra, you know, days off for kids. I'm just wondering what, like, the state is kind of reporting and what they think that's from.
Yeah, so discussions locally, state, I'm not sure. They don't really have any running theories on it. I think some of our running theories are COVID related in particular. I think last year we saw a steady increase in COVID rates and a steady decrease, like a bell curve almost. This year we saw more fluctuation in that. So that certainly plays in. Shorter quarantine periods this year, but also this year we keep in mind we didn't have the option for distance learning. So a lot of families who didn't have a choice but to come to school this year. So our nurses' assessment as one standing theory is folks, which was good, were a lot more sensitive to any symptoms, which led to holding kids out of school, among other theories. But I think those are two of the leading contenders for some of the attendance numbers that we're seeing at the end of this year.
Thank you.
Sure, Ellen?
Were there any notable trends in like age or grade or anything like that when we look at the, I mean, across the range? So the range is really the 6 absences up to 15 or more, right? Anything there that popped out in terms of themes?
No clear themes across the grades. We did have a number of older students with some substantial social emotional challenges and concerns, which have led to some sustained absences, which would show up in that bottom row there for sure. Mm-hmm. So shifting gears a little bit to PE. So the first slide here is just a refresher from last year. This is a bit of a unique standard assessment that occurs each year across the state. This assessment happens only at Hebron Elementary School in grades 4 and 6. So Mr. Corona runs the show as it comes to PE testing. Of note, this has been the same test since 1990. There actually are conversations right now about revising portions of this assessment and the methodology behind the way the scores are arrived at. The test is broken down across 4 different units. So aerobic endurance, flexibility, upper body strength and endurance, and abdominal muscle strength and endurance. For a student to count for the district, they have to pass all 4 tests. So that's just something to keep in mind when we look at how this state scores this for each district. Here's the graphic looking across the years. Again, state hasn't released publicly available information on this PE assessment since 1819. So we have our scores from the last few years, but no comparisons. You'll see that we jumped up from 48.8% of students at or above expectation in 2018-2019, up to 77.5% this past year. Still good this year, slightly down to 70% of students at or above expected levels, meaning 70% or more students passed all 4 of those tests. Here's the breakdown by grade. So across the 4 subtests, you have push-ups, curl-ups, sit and reach, and the mile run. This is helpful in the conversations with Mr. Corona and Mr. Petrone as we look forward into the summer, looking at revising and auditing our current PE curriculum. This is important and valuable data for us to look at to kind of hone in on some of the focus areas that we have across the various grades. So you'll see that certainly we have some strong students with the push-ups, and mile run has always been a historical point of conversation for us as well. Okay, hand this off to Mrs. Uriano.
So Mr. Larkin and I are going to take a look at the academic and SEL data from the school year, and this will, for those of you who were with us in the spring last year, this will look very similar to what we presented last year. So for reading, we're going to take a look at running records, K to 6, and math. At GHS, we'll be doing Bridges assessments, and at HES, looking at universal screening assessments, and then we're looking at referral data as part of our social emotional. So this is taking a look at our kindergarten running record information. And you will see a comparison of the 1920, the 2021 school year, and then this year, which is in yellow. So as we have spoken about in several different board meetings, especially when we're talking about preschool, a significant number of our kindergartners this year came to us without previous preschool or social experiences. So because of the pandemic and all facets of challenges that the pandemic has presented, significant number of our students are coming in without some of those readiness skills that we are typically seeing. So you can see in the winter, only 45% of our students were reading where we would like them to be in the winter of kindergarten. And then that did increase to 65% of our students, but it does still put us below where we typically are at this point at the end of a school year. And we'll talk more about next steps at the conclusion of this. So first grade information, you can see significant growth in first grade. Our students in first grade are really comfortable with our workshop routines and structures. This year in particular, at the fall when they came in, we had about 50% reading where we would like them to be at the beginning of the school year, and that has increased to 87%, which is right around where we typically are at the end of a school year. So there's a lot to celebrate right there. And then second grade, and we are finishing this year somewhat near where we are typically, and I should have mentioned the reason we don't have the green bar in the 1920 years, that's because when school shut down. So we continue to move ourselves closer to the 80%, 90%, which is where we would like our school to be. So that's for reading. And so before I talk about math, I just want to mention, so what we're comparing here is a little bit of apples to oranges. So our first three bars, so the 17, 18, 18, 19, and 2021 school years, we were using something called iReady as our sort of summative assessment in mathematics. We are not using that anymore this year, so we are transitioning to a different assessment. So the first 3 years are one type of assessment, and this year is a different type of assessment, but it is the only summative assessment we have in math, so I just want to tell you a little bit of that caveat. So you can see up here, second grade in particular is what we see as our next steps in some of the areas where we need to focus some of our math instruction in. Kindergarten, we're finishing at about 76% students on grade level according to that assessment. First grade, about 85%, so you can see, again, that's a lot to celebrate. Last year, you'll see we're at 56%. And then in second grade, we were at about 50% last year, and we've increased it to 59%. So as we've mentioned before, we continue to audit our assessments, make sure that the assessments that we're doing are meaningful and worth our time, and that we're getting usable information. In this particular end-of-year assessment, we feel really good that the information that can be gathered from that can be shared with next year's classroom teacher, so that when those students come into their new classroom, that teacher has great information about each individual and can really support students where they are. So this is taking a look at our referral data, which actually very closely mimics last year's referral data. And this is comparing 5 of our different settings, which tend to be how we classify these. So the classroom, the bus, the bathroom, the recess time, and then hallway and cafeteria. I will tell you, recess, because we were not mixed classes for most of the school year, has been much lower than it is typically. We have, in the last couple months, started combining classes, and then last week we started going to whole grade levels out there at recess again. So we've done some reteaching to teach into that, but that's why our recess data is lower than it typically is. But you will see, as in similar years, the bus continues to be the greatest area of challenge. It's a lot of students with less adult supervision. In March, we saw this big jump on our buses, so we did some reteaching. We had a bus come in, parked right in front. We brought classes out there, did some reteaching about expected behaviors on the bus with students out there, and then have seen it decrease monthly overall. Any questions for me about Gilead before I hand over to Mr. Larkin?
I do have a question about the assessments. Can you explain a little bit how that's performed or done?
Sure. So the reading assessment is a running record, and that is a child sitting one-on-one with their teacher and reading a leveled book out loud to the teacher. They receive scores for their accuracy, so how accurately they're reading the words, and also tested on their comprehension of the story. And basically the teacher is working, there are different levels, in trying to determine what they can read independently and what would be their instructional level, so that then instruction can be tailored for what they need at that next level. The mathematics one that I mentioned is a summative assessment. It's sort of like a packet of pages and problems that covers all the different math concepts from the entire school year. Because it is lengthy at our age, we break it up into 4 or 5 days because they can't sustain, but it's read out loud to them. Teacher walks around while they take it, but it sort of covers all the different concepts and skills from the entire school year.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay, do you just want to talk a little bit about the running record they have to continue to improve to be benchmark?
Sure. So if you were to look at our running record data, so we have benchmarks. We actually give the running record 4 times in grades 1 and grades 2. So there are different benchmarks throughout the year. So for a student, so if we look at second grade, in the fall we had 76% of our students reading on grade level. It was grade level for that time of the school year. So then in the winter, the benchmark moves up. We expect them to go up a couple more levels. 77% were on what we expect for that time of the school year. So while it looks like 76, 77, 78, the bar is increasing each time. So that means each time that percentage of students is meeting that next bar. And just a comment about running record, that does not get capped by the end of the grade level. So if we've got a second grader who is reading on a 4th grade reading level, they're receiving an assessment on that 4th grade reading level. So we can really determine what books they can read all by themselves and what books the teacher can teach them to read next. So it really moves along with the student. Of course.
You can tell me if it's at the end, that's fine, just tell me it's at the end. But just kind of like what places are set for like the second grade, like math.
Sure. Yep.
But if it's at the end.
That's okay, I'll speak specifically to it. Yeah, so our 2 biggest areas of challenge that we're looking to attack next year would be our kindergartners, sort of overall, but especially in the area of reading. And we know that going into 1st grade, they're going to need a lot of support, especially with their phonics skill, their phonological awareness, which tends to be what those students are missing right now. So we have plans in place, and one of the things we'll mention is by prioritizing the smaller class sizes in 1st grade next year is going to be hugely helpful in that area. We are anticipating the state is supposed to release a new set of reading assessments for us to use next year. We're still waiting on those, so that may inform some of the decisions we make for next year. But the smaller class sizes, and then we are also going to be implementing an additional phonological awareness program and supports in for 1st grade next year for students that need it. And then in math, we're going to do a significant amount of work around things like, there's a component of our math program called Number Corner, which sort of teaches in a parallel line to the Bridges program. It's part of the Bridges program, but it's sort of based around the calendar, but it provides more of a spiraling of math concepts. Unfortunately, due to our compressed schedules, due to COVID, Number Corner oftentimes has been shortened. It sort of became the thing that sort of got shortened or sort of compacted, and so we're really going to return to that next year. We think that will provide a lot of support for students with that. We also are going to focus some of our coaching work around math for next year. We have a fair amount of teacher changes next year in second grade too, so there'll be support for that as well. There was one more thing. Oh, and then we're going to continue to use the tutor next year to sort of focus on these two areas. One would be kindergarten, and the second would be the second grade math.
Thank you.
You got it.
So these graphs look very similar for 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th grade. This first set is the running records again. So you see the 3rd grade, the orange bar is this year. Again, I'm glad that Katie explained that's an important distinction to make, that 67% of the students in the fall were at or above the grade level expectation. They had to meet the pace of what the expectation is raising to continue to be at grade level expectation in the winter and in the spring. But those bars are going in the direction that we want them to, and also with an ever increasing expectation for what constitutes the grade level expectation. In the upper elementary grades, that assessment becomes about the same things that Katie described, but the comprehension conversation is really important. That's an important part of the assessment in 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th grade. This is one-on-one administered between the teacher and the student. At the end, after the student has read it aloud and the teacher is, tabulating every correct word, there's a comprehension conversation between the teacher and the student, and it's very open-ended. Tell me about this book. What was the author's message? What did you learn from this? And so that's where we focus our efforts. There's grade 4. And again, while it looks like no growth, 85 to 84, that big group of kids did grow because they had to reach a higher expectation in the spring than they did in the winter. And you can see some nice rebound there from 2021. Very pleased with how 5th grade is ending this year. Where we would want them to be, and that's 6th grade. So as Katie described too with her math data, this is not apples to apples. So the green bar is very much a pre-assessment. So the students took that assessment early in the year, September, without the benefit of much instruction. So the purple and the orange bars, we revised that a little bit, revised our thinking around that, and instead of administering those in the middle of the year and more towards the springtime, those were more summative in nature, so after some instruction. So green bar, before instruction, still gives teachers good information, gives teachers good information about what students might require some acceleration because they're already on a pretest demonstrating mastery of some skills and concepts, but we revised that and gave the winter and spring ones as more of a summative assessment. This is our discipline referral data. You can see too there that it is distinguished, disaggregated by area, and this isn't a surprise to us. The bus, again, is an unstructured setting with lots of students on it and more opportunities to not make great choices. So we have addressed that in lots of small group conversations and reteaching conversations with our students as well. You can see that uptick in October and again in March. Those are predictable upticks in those months of the year, especially October. September is a time when we're explicitly teaching into expectations, and in October we're making sure that students are being held accountable for the expectations that we just spent a month explicitly teaching into and modeling. So that's a fairly predictable uptick there. We want to make sure that students are being held accountable for those rules that we have just taught them.
Everyone gets antsy in March.
It's cold and dark and dreary.
No holidays.
No days off. So as a result of that assessment data, here are some of our next steps that we are going to be focused on in the coming year. A continued focus on social emotional learning and relationships. We know that relationships are the most important thing that we do with students. We've talked before, we have a robust social emotional learning approach in Hebron with our responsive classroom approach coupled with our Choose Love curriculum. Prioritizing that smaller class size in grade 1 to address those kindergarten needs. Ensuring equitable opportunities for all of our learners, making sure that all of our learners get what they need, including a fully implemented SRBI program, tutoring if that's a service that they need, which bleeds right into that next topic there, the full implementation of tiered SEL supports. We're excited about the increase of the 0.6 psychologist to help address some of those needs. On the student achievement meetings, we call those our SAM meetings. Those are opportunities, they're every other week for teachers to meet as a team in small groups. They are facilitated by our curriculum specialist, and that's an opportunity for some really job-embedded professional learning for teachers, but it's an opportunity to look at assessment data, look at student work, and make instructional plans based on that assessment data and student work, so responding in very real time to the needs of the students. We're excited, too, to be piloting the use of the data warehouse next year, 1 grade here at Gilead and 1 grade over at our school, grade 4. That's the ION program, so data right at the teacher's fingertips. So we're excited about how that will help the work of the student achievement meetings in the future. Pacing, our math and literacy pacing, that's something that we're going to be taking a close look at. One of the things that we found this year was our units of study went a little bit slower than we would like, and that has implications for when students are then to take an assessment, whether or not we've gotten through enough content before we're giving them that assessment. And the reason that they went slower is because there has been some unfinished learning from previous years because of interruptions in instruction. So our teachers have had to slow down a little bit in some places, or reteach some things that were not quite at mastery yet. And so we're going to be monitoring the pacing next year to make sure we're on pace with our assessments so that we're not giving students an assessment that they haven't had the benefit of enough instruction for prior. We're excited, too, about the work that Dr. Baird is leading with our math specialists with the district-wide math collaborative. One of the ways that we're going to try to address some of the concerns that we have at HES in our math achievement is by mirroring the work that our Teachers College staff developer does in literacy with our math specialists. So our Teachers College staff developer in literacy meets with teams of teachers, really go thoroughly through a unit of study and talk about what the big ideas are of the unit. We're going to use our math specialists to do that work with our teachers next year in the same way they have that work done with literacy. And that's all we have.
Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions? Oh, let me go back.
Thank you so much.
I know, that's fine. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Mr.
I do.
Larkin?
I do. So I just to kind of simplify all of that, thank you. That was very comprehensive and so helpful. So just to kind of simplify, if you don't mind me asking it this way, I'm sure there's a better way to ask it. If you had to pull out, like, it sounds like clearly the kindergartner is going into 1st grade for reading and the 2nd grader is going into 3rd. Are those like the 2 kind of glaring areas to you that pop out in terms of needing that extra support?
Yes, I guess I'm also sort of extrapolating our experience from this year and also predicting that our incoming kindergartners will have been impacted the same way our current kindergartners have, and so it's likely we don't have information necessarily on them yet, but I'm also anticipating that we will see similar challenges to our incoming kindergartners next year. And truthfully, we didn't really talk, like, we don't have the same kind of data about preschool, but it could be our preschoolers that are
Right,
as well. But I would anticipate that they will also be in a similar situation.
So I guess my question would be for us, as board members, when we look at this, there's some really amazing data here that shows, especially it appears to me, between the beginning of the year, the middle of the year, and the end of the year, just incredible progress and what our educators have been able to do to support our children. And I would ask us as a board, how are we going to have really meaningful conversations about how we can help? So that would be my question back to the administration. And then to us as a team, what do you need from us to help? Because clearly, when there are tools available, there's wonderful, magic that can happen and progress that can be made. So what can we do to make sure that you have the resources that you need? Because our kids need our help.
you can tell based on the data, so.
Yeah, I mean, I'll answer that a little bit already. So we've had some of this data as we were building out the budget, and we have made some strategic moves with some of the funding, and the board has been incredibly supportive as we've made those recommendations. And specifically the use of the American Rescue Plan money for their tutoring program and the enrichment activities after school. The move to the 0.6 additional school psychologist, I think, is going to have a big impact. The needed section of first grade, because we're going to be going from 6 sections of kindergarten now to 7 sections of first grade next year. And while we could meet technically our class size guidelines with 6 sections to start the year with what our numbers are today, we know that we get students throughout the year, and so we would likely be over class size limits at some point next year. And prioritizing a smaller class size for first grade. First grade is one of the most, if not the most, critical grades, especially for reading development. So I think the board has been incredibly supportive. We're going to be doing our admin retreat work this summer, kind of in parallel to the board retreat work. So we'll keep that in mind as we're continuing to fine tune the next round for our district advancement plan, the next steps for next year. But I think the board already has shown very considerable support for this work. But the other thing I want to sort of wait for, we've got some very preliminary SBAC data for grades 3 through 6. That data continues to be updated as the state verifies scores. So we typically will have more like final preliminary data, not for public reporting, but kind of in the next month or so. So I think that that'll be good data to look at alongside the data that Mr. Larkin showcased tonight. But I too am very excited for the District Math Collaborative. We started that sort of mid-year this year and made some very strategic moves with some math assessments for next year. And we have begun to plan some of the PD that we'd like to do next year. So very similar to the Teachers College work that we have the staff developer in for literacy, replicating that in math. And something that I've helped lead in previous district, and we did see some nice gains from that. So I think that that's going to be impactful as well. Yeah.
Another, if you don't mind me. So another area that's coming to mind, that, we can't take a deep dive into tonight, but again, I would look to my colleagues and just think, thinking about parent engagement. Do parents, they know, we have our parent-teacher meetings and they're in constant conversations, right, with their teachers about how their child is doing, but is there anything else that we can be doing in terms of family engagement to support families and parents and knowing what are some tools that you can utilize over the summer during breaks or things like that? So I would challenge us to think about that as well. I keep looking over at you, Amanda, because we've had so many conversations over the years about family engagement, but I wonder if that's something that we can think about as a team as well.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely think that's important. We've had that conversation in communications committee, and maybe we can have that again before, maybe we can set one up before the end of the school year, right at the end of the school year. And I was gonna wait till the chair report, but also the importance of pre-K. I mean, it shows in the data when you have kids coming in that have no preschool, like no formal, any kind of preschool experience. I mean, you see what happens. And so I'll speak to that in my chair report a little bit, but I think like our ask there is important and needed.
We continue to have 20 students on the wait list.
20 students. How many students have enrolled so far for kindergarten next year? Do we know?
82.
Okay. 20 kids on the wait list for pre-K, 82 kindergarten. All right, thank you. Anyone else? Thanks, Ally. There's some good. Ideas. I do think we could do the family engagement. I know the school district also puts something out, but I think additional resources or, maybe would help as well. I mean, at this point, I did have one more question, Mr. Larkin, so I'm thinking about these second graders that are really going to third grade now, right? That are maybe a little bit far behind, or half of them. So do we still have, and maybe this is a question for both of you, tutoring available for those kids next year? Yes. Okay, perfect. All right, wonderful, thank you. Right, any other? Okay, so next is public comments. The Hebron Board of Education values the public comment period as it represents an opportunity for members of the public to express their views to the board on matters within the board's authority. Procedurally, public comments will be limited to 3 minutes per person, and citizens will be asked to identify themselves. All comments must be directed to the board and not to any individual board member or individual member of the administration. The board and the administration will not respond to questions or engage in dialogue during the public comment period. The board administration will determine when and how to address questions that arise during the public comment period. So I don't know if there's any public comments at this time. All right. Seeing none, I'll move on to the approval of minutes. So we did have quorum at Resource Management Committee, so I'll do it as a consent. So I just ask for a motion to approve the regular meeting minutes of May 12th, 2022, and the Resource Management Committee minutes of May 12th, 2022.
So moved. Second.
All right, Amanda moves, Ally Schweigel seconds. Any discussion? All right.
You don't have to roll call it. There's no one on the phone.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right, motion passes unanimously. So nobody's on the phone.
Very efficient.
I feel confident.
I saw my daggers.
You're not the one saying. All right, Dr. Bear, the superintendent's report.
Yes, I'm going to be, I promise to be brief tonight. I'm going to start with a celebration. We had 2 students go on to nationals for an invention convention, and I've heard back about one of those students. And Rachel Smith, who was first place nationally last year in kindergarten, has maintained her status. So she won first place nationally for first grade. So we are going to invite her to a future board meeting. I'm actually thinking October, because that is manufacturing month. So I have already reached out and keep you posted on that. And I eagerly await news on our other student who was at nationals. The first item in my written report, the district advancement plan, nothing really new to report. I think based on the conversation tonight, something that maybe we want to focus in on at the board retreat might be the area of family engagement. For COVID operations, the only update I have here, well, really 2 updates, 3 actually. There are 0 cases on the dashboard, so that is certainly a celebration. We had talked previously about sunsetting the dashboard over the summer. One of the things that I've been concerned about is that the numbers in our dashboard are typically so low that the state would typically, would require suppression of that kind of data. And with the rationale that when you have so few numbers to report, it can be easy to identify who those individuals are. So that is something the admin team has talked about, and is something that we would recommend at this point, is to phase out the dashboard over the summer. The next COVID operations plan update required under the American Rescue Plan would be in late August, so the plan would be to update the plan then. At this point, the only change that we foresee would be the dashboard component, because that is referenced in the plan. And then we would send out the updated plan probably within the regular principal messages. But that's something that will be required over the late summer based on when we last updated it. The Innovation Advisory Council met on May 25th at Gilead University. We took a tour of their program. We did one virtually over the pandemic, but it was nice to do it in person and see the tools in action. And we've been discussing the possibility of combining our Innovation Advisory Council with the Goodwin launched a district leadership collaborative this year. And it seems like they've got the district leaders, we've got a lot of the industry people, maybe we should be thinking about combining forces and maybe even reaching out and getting a state rep involved, because a lot of the things that we are discussing really need some state level change to allow us to break through some red tape. So that's an ongoing conversation. Joe, who's not here tonight, is on the Innovation Advisory Council, and at Goodwin, we had a meeting after the 25th, and I spoke about this then. They were excited to hear that we had a board member on our group. And so anyway, more news to come on that. The District Safety and Security and Safe School Climate Committee had their last meeting of the year on May 24th. You might note that that date is the same date as the tragedy in Texas. We actually were having our meeting when that was unfolding, and discussing some additional safety training and updates at that meeting. We don't discuss the details of those meetings here, just because if we publicly talk about our safety plans, it makes our schools less safe. But we do have board representatives at that meeting, and parent participation both at the school level safety teams and at the district level. And we'd invite anybody watching, if they're interested, to reach out to their principals about that particular committee. The Professional Development and Educator Evaluation Committee met on May 11th, which was our final meeting of the year. We voted to extend the flexibilities for implementing the Connecticut Guidelines for Educator Evaluation, which under the law is from 2017, for the 21-22 school year. That's when the flexibilities were first developed. To extend them into next year, so our committee voted to adopt the flexibilities, which essentially just continues status quo. But there were some flexibilities that the State Board of Education approved during the pandemic. There continues to be discussion at the state level for a bigger overhaul of teacher evaluation. So I think they're seeing extending the flexibilities until that time is a likely event. We need the board to take action to codify what PDAC did. So there is a recommended action item on your agenda tonight for you to do that. You've done it the last 2 years, so this is just a continuation of approval that you've given before. And that concludes my report.
What are some of the flexibilities? So can you just remind me,
Yes.
They are still getting evaluated?
Yes, and so essentially, the first 2 years, flexibilities also meant people were not given a final end-of-year rating. This year, that portion went away, so this year people are getting a final rating. But the way, there is a complicated formula for how you arrive at that rating. So the flexibilities allow for you to do a more holistic rating rather than do the exact formula that is in the state statute. So that is the major change. The other component would be that there is some flexibility on some of the language within the state statute around how goals are formulated that then lead to the ratings later. There are some additional flexibilities in terms of the goal development. And one of those is that, like, for administrators, instead of 3 goals, they have 2 goals in sort of academics. For teachers, they have to have 2, and the flexibilities, they can have 1. With the stakeholder feedback goal, there's a push for you to focus on social emotional learning. So that's it in a nutshell.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so to that end, can I have a motion to approve the adoption of the flexibilities for the Connecticut Guidelines for Education, Educator Evaluation for the 2022-2023 school year?
So moved.
Amanda moves, Diana seconds. Is there any discussion? All right, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? All right, motion passes unanimously. Thank you. All right, Ms. O'Leary, our business manager report.
Great. As far as technology is concerned for last month, we were just doing some work to wrap up a couple of the grant funding opportunities that we had this year. So just finishing up with distributing our Chromebooks and getting our new technology for our board meetings, and then just doing some grant reporting there, as well as just finalizing some of the work around SBAC testing and making sure that there was a smooth rollout from a technology standpoint for that. So that is all concluded now. Our facilities department continues their spring cleaning work and looking at some of our annual contracts like waste management and pest control, and just looking for opportunities for cost savings if there are any as we move into the next year to enter into some of those agreements. I don't have much to say about transportation. It's been fairly quiet, thankfully. We've been running our 11 buses almost every day. We've had a couple incidents here and there, but buses have been clearing on time. We've been getting our requests in from parents to have specialized transportation pickups and drop-offs for next year. So Mrs. Clavette has been contacting parents about any questions around that. We have been in discussion with DATCO about busing for next year. We did initially budget for 13 buses, but they continue to have trouble as far as bus driver recruitment is concerned. So, you know, we're just talking about what's realistic around busing for next year as we move to start considering putting our runs together. So more to come on that. But that is a piece of the puzzle as we're moving forward. You have all of your enclosures for your student activity accounts. We had a donation of $1,800 to Gilead Hills School from the Lions Club. We thank them for that. And the big activity that you see in Hebron is all around a 6th grade field trip to the adventure park, so they're readying themselves for that. Tomorrow. How's the weather tomorrow?
Good.
Are we okay? Great. Our food services, we had a significant amount of revenue last month because we did receive that supply chain assistance grant. So food services continues to look good, and we have a healthy balance of several months of operating costs there. So food services is looking great. In our preschool fund, as we approach the end of the year, we look at any extra hours that had to be worked from our paraprofessionals that might have gone over what we originally budgeted for, or any vacancies we had in any of the slots for preschool that would have affected some of our revenue. So ultimately, I had to do a salary adjustment on some of our staff there to the tune of about $10,000 back into the general fund. So you'll see that adjustment in the general fund report. And in the transfer request that I'm looking to move some money into salaries to cover that expense. And there will be, it just inevitably happens because extra hours here and there will be one more tweak I'll be making as we get to the last payroll of the year, just to balance that out to zero. For our grants, it says we plan to submit. Well, since I wrote this report, we submitted and were approved for a special ed stipend for $15,000. So that money is going to pay for a variety of items, but one is some training for our paraprofessionals over the summer to behavior technician training for some paras, some resources for our ABA classrooms, and some technology for some of our special ed classrooms. So we'll be moving forward with those purchases throughout July and August. Oh, and we finally were updated on the security grant, and we were not awarded that.
Could you speak to that a little bit? Because some of that is a reimbursement for some things that we already had purchased. Am I thinking about that correctly?
Yes. Yeah, so the majority of that security grant we wrote back in June was you could look back about, I think it was 4 years, to get reimbursed for some items you previously purchased a rate of about 56% of those items. And then what we were going to do was reinvest that funding in a fence at Hebron Elementary School to separate the playscape from the parking lot and then street. So, so that grant was not awarded. They had more money asked for than they had available. So we'll have opportunities when the funding cycle opens up again to resubmit, or, you know, if it's something we want to consider writing into future general local fund grant.
Or request the town, because they have COVID funding.
Right.
Or
right.
that.
And then, I know it's not in your report, but under grants, I know that you've done a little bit of investigation work around the grants for air conditioning, and there's been some communication with some building committee members. Could you just give people a little snapshot of that?
Sure. So, so there's 90 million, is it 90 million-ish that will become available to do some work around air conditioning and HVAC upgrades across the state. That money would have to be utilized in the calendar year of 2023, so it would be a very quick turnaround time. We had been emailing with members of the building committee about that, and there was, you know, an ask for me to go and do a little bit more investigation through CASBO. So I was on, you know, I was on a call with the CASBO group earlier this week, and they just think that it's such a, it's pretty long shot to become eligible for that money. It's in the grand scheme of things, it's a really little bit of money for very expensive projects, and they think that it might be focused at larger districts. So it won't necessarily stop us from trying to move forward and pursue this as an option, but you know, we've reached out to get some work around HVAC design professional RFPs, so I have some of that information I can share back with the building committee. Is that where you were looking for me to go?
Yeah, and I think, I feel like the headline of that is, I don't think we should get too excited about that money. I think that our community is not going to be seen as needy enough compared to the other applications that are going to be in. And while $90 million sounds like a lot of money, it's not when you think about how expensive these projects are. Right. So we eagerly await our facility study in the fall and looking at more comprehensive renovation type projects, in my opinion.
Yes.
To include air conditioning.
Yes. And then my final section here is just the general fund fiscal update. You have some reports in there that'll show you we have a $95,000 balance. That, again, that sounds like a lot for us at this point in the year, but there are there's plans for some of that unencumbered money. So there's quite a bit of curriculum work that's going to be happening in the final 2 weeks of June. There are some purchases that we're looking to make. Should you approve some budget transfers that I have on my budget transfer report. So we're looking to invest in some resources for our 6th grade classrooms. So there's a plan for all of the cents there. But if you look over at the transfer request, if I can just, it may look long, but if you look at the first column, it just really highlights where we're looking to move the money. The second column is, you know, $100 at a time, where there's money left in all these other lines that we don't plan to spend. But where we're looking to move the money, just sort of top to bottom, is some funding into the teacher line to fund that balance of the preschool teacher I had to move to the general fund. Some additional funding for subs that I've projected we would need through the end of the year. Some additional legal fees.
We are negotiating 2 big contracts right now.
Yes. Is that what that is?
Yes.
Yeah. I was just wrote that today.
Yeah.
And again, it's just a, you know, it's a projection based on our most recent bill, having been our April bill and having 2 more months to go. So that's the projection there. You see $3,500, like I said, for the 6th grade classroom materials, some special ed materials we were looking for. And then you see a larger number there, the $9,800 for diesel. So we have a contract with the town and RAM locked into certain fuel pricing, and we had reached the maximum number of gallons for that contract last month. So now we're paying market rate, so we went from $2 and change to $5.70 something.
$6.
So it's had a pretty significant impact on our
And the way
budget for the end of the year.
And the way we go out to bid for that, because we do it with the town in RAM, we have a firm, a brokerage firm, or somebody who basically does that work for us and then meets with, Eva will go, the business manager at RAM, Caitlin, myself, Andy, I think Donna and Elaine perhaps, were there last year, and perhaps the RAM superintendent, and we essentially listen to our broker, he goes over the prices that he can get for us, and we at that point just decide to either lock in or wait another month, or we usually make a decision kind of around now, for the next year. But, you know, when we put together our budget back in the winter, diesel was, not the price as it is right now. So this is gonna be something we're gonna have to watch next year, because no matter what we lock in, if we lock in, this is gonna be an area that is going to come in over budget, I would imagine.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So that sort of summarizes what you've got there, but I'm happy to answer any other questions you might have.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions before we make a motion to approve this? So these are kind of this month, the next month, maybe two, are really, you know, the end of year kind of, you know, why can't I say that word tonight?
Balancing it out.
Right, thank you. Balancing everything out. So we'll see these for the next couple months as standard, but if you have any specific questions before we make a motion.
Do we feel like because we are doing 2 negotiations and we're still on the height of them, do we feel like that number is adequate to get us through?
I do.
Okay.
I think there was a bulk of work done in April. A lot of, there was a lot of behind the scenes sort of research that was happening and we billed for that amount of money. And I took that as the prediction for what we're gonna be charged in May and June.
Okay. I just like to be, better safe than sorry.
I think I erred on the side of caution here.
Great, thank you.
And kind of where we are right now is that we're trying to sort of end the year with a balance that was similar to the clock project that we did to move forward in, to put that in the non-lapsing account. So within a few $100s or a couple of pennies, like we're kind of like there with these transfers. So anything additional, if we don't have something surprising to offset it, it's gonna start digging into that amount that we had planned to carry over. That's kind of where we are right now.
Okay. All right, so that being said, can I have a motion to approve the line item transfers as presented?
So moved.
All right, Amanda moves. Is there any discussion? Hang on a second. All right, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? All right, motion passed unanimously. I'm so not used to doing that anymore that I had to think about it. Anything else? All right, thank you very much. All right, so the chair's report, so first I'll start with, as you know, we formally asked the Board of Finance for a supplemental appropriation to add an additional pre-K teacher because we have 20 students on the wait list, and we wanted to be able to service all of the children in Hebron. As we heard tonight, especially how important that is. I mean, we've known that already, but I mean, the data shows it as well. I shared with the board, but just so the public is aware, so we got a response from the Board of Finance who asked the town attorney an opinion on our request. So their response on May 20th was that the Board of Finance is not permitted to approve a supplemental appropriation in advance of the budget year. So, in other words, before July 1, because technically the supplemental appropriation would be for the upcoming school year. So, that being said, I mean, we can resubmit for July 1. Our next meeting, we don't have an actual regular meeting scheduled in July because July is our board retreat month. So we have a board retreat on July 27th and 28th. So that's the end of July. So we could, I mean, we've already agreed to send it. We could, I can ask for a motion to send it again on or after July 1. We could wait till the end of July and do it at the board retreat. I'm just thinking about parents who want their kids to start the school year in the fall. Right. So I guess I would just, if it's the board agrees.
Do you want to do that under whole?
Oh, yes. I will do it under pre-K. But anyway, that's what I'm going to ask you in a few minutes. Okay. Thank you. Dr. Barrett's keeping me right on track. All right. ARPA, we received a communication from a member of the community who I responded to, was asking if we could use some of the town's ARPA funds because they got a significant amount of money compared to our amount of money. If we could also utilize some of the town's money for the schools. You know, that community member mentioned safety and security. You know, the cut that we were given by Board of Finance, could they cover some of that with ARPA funds? And so I will say, like, the Board of Education, we asked for air conditioning for both of our schools with their first allotment of funds. We asked for a playscape for Gilead. So this playscape is on the agenda, is on the Board of Selectmen's list to go to town meeting for a vote. The AC, the air conditioning is not. But they will also have a second portion of that funding where we could do further requests. So that's something that I would like to discuss, you know, maybe in July as part of our retreat, because we can make additional requests for different items.
And the air conditioning, the amount of money the town got, I don't believe would actually pay for how much it would cost to air condition both schools. That doesn't mean it couldn't be used to partially fund it. But I think that the initial quotes we got for air conditioning were in excess of $2 million, which is, I think, around like what the town.
For both schools?
I think it was each.
Each school?
I think so.
Yeah.
I don't.
I'm speaking off the top of my head, and we'll need more than one quote, obviously, too. But I know the town had looked at just to try to get some rough numbers.
Yeah. I think it's important. I mean, I think all the town buildings, RAM, the library, everywhere is AC, so I would like our kids to also have AC, and our staff. But yeah, that sounds about right, probably.
Yeah.
But we'll know more with also the building.
The facility study.
Yeah, the facility study should give us some information on that. I think that's it. Just a reminder that our retreat is the 27th and 28th, so we were going to have it here because it's during the summer, so we could have it in room 3. It's those evenings. Some of the items that would possibly be on the agendas for those evenings are obviously family engagement, as I mentioned earlier. The superintendent's evaluation is done at that time. The district advancement plan, kind of an update on what happened this year, where we're looking at going forward. And we could potentially have either someone come and do training or also do a board evaluation. So those are some of the items thinking for the retreat. But if you have any that you think of that might be beneficial, please email me, let me know, or just reach out to me. And that's all I have right now for the chair's report. Committee updates, all right, so policy committee, so the policies on the agenda are all second reads, so there would be ones we would potentially be voting on tonight. So I'll do a quick reminder, I know we went through them, you had them to read. The first one, the video and digital tools in the classroom. This is a brand new policy, it's not something that we have, so we wanted to kind of put something in place because we have no, kind of guidance around that, so that's that policy. Do you have any questions on that one before we move on?
We've talked about this one a lot. It was
I
referred
know.
back to committee.
Yes,
with
and
the
back and
discussion
forth.
had, and now it's back and it's here for the second month for you to review.
Yes, ready to go. I made some changes, I think.
Yep.
And we have this nice form attached.
Mhm.
The second one is the official, the chairperson bylaw is basically just adding that, the official correspondence can be sent by the chair on behalf of the board, you know, with the board's authority, of course. So that's what that piece is, number 7. Then we have the official duties of the secretary, so kind of moving that correspondence to be, in line with like what our attorneys say and what the chair does, of course authorized by the board, to send that correspondence, and then taking away, you know, a report of the doings of the board. It's such old language. The doings of the board, I mean, I don't want our board secretary to have to report doings of the board to the town. All our meetings and videos are online if they would like to watch those. And finally, the vice chair, we kind of added a piece to it. It was like literally one sentence. So we said, you know, so we just added language like as advised. But the vice chair cannot fill vacancies required to be filled by the chair, and does not serve as ex officio member of the committees. However, the vice chair will work with the chair and superintendent to become generally informed of board business. And in the chair's absence, the vice chair will act as a resource to the superintendent on decisions which may require input between board meetings. So I don't know if anyone has any discussion on those before we make a motion. Very good. All right, so can I please have a motion to adopt policy 6010, bylaw 9013, bylaw 9014, and bylaw 9015 as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Amanda moved, Ally seconds. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right, motion passes unanimously. All right, and that's the policy committee. Resource management committee, I know Joe Margais isn't here tonight, but we talked about.
Yeah, no meeting.
Oh, we didn't meet since those minutes, right? No, we didn't meet tonight, sorry. I forgot we did the minutes. Student growth and district advancement committee, Nikki Matthews.
No meeting.
Communications and
Did not meet.
did not meet. Negotiations committee, we're still in negotiations with the teachers union and with our non-certified staff unions. Hopefully, well, you know, I can't give any more information than that. Hopefully we'll be able to settle those shortly. It's always the hope. PTA liaison, Amanda Van Museum.
The PTA is wrapping up the end of the year. They are moving around their board members, and they are looking for a secretary. If anyone is watching or here that was interested in PTA secretary position, reach out to the PTA. Oh, and school readiness. Dr. Briere, would you be able to give
Sure.
an update?
School readiness met for the last time this year on May 31st and wound down the year, discussing all grants are expected to be fully expended by June 30th, which is always a good update. Also talked about Becky from AHM provided FRC updates related to their reptile family program that they ran in person. A really great turnout, it sounds, 70 plus people.
Yeah, it's great.
So we talked about that. Sounded like it was a really awesome event. And our school readiness liaison walked us through our bylaws as a council, and we updated those. So we'll meet again next in the fall.
Thank you. Awesome. Thank you. Ally Schmeisel, Wellness Committee?
Didn't meet.
Oh, didn't. And Shared Service Advisory Group didn't meet. I will, since we're on Shared Service Advisory Group, because our superintendents meet together in our region, I don't know, I'm just putting it out there. Just given, like, there's turnover on the boards, you know, obviously during election season, but also when people are moving, like, you know, and then there's new leadership on boards, it's ever changing. I don't know that it behooves us, it's just a thought, to have this advisory group, given that our superintendents meet together on a monthly basis, and kind of discuss that need, and if they found somewhere where we could collaborate, IT with the town, I mean, you also meet with the town, or world language, just throwing something out there, I don't know, it's, I'm bringing it to the board, because I don't know that we need to have this committee.
Yeah, do we need to make a motion to do that? I mean,
We
I'm
do.
not a fan of
Do we?
having a meeting to
I mean,
have
to
a meeting,
sunset the
right?
committee, we do.
Okay, yeah, okay, well then I'll wait until we
But we
make
would
a
have to
motion.
have
so I can-
two-thirds vote to put it, a motion on the agenda, correct, to sunset it? Because it's not on the agenda to sunset.
But it's on the agenda as an item.
Right, but not a motion.
Not for possible action.
There's not possible
Yeah,
action.
that's true. We could, sure.
Can I make a motion that we sunset the shared services advisory group effective immediately?
Second.
I approve. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right, so we added that. Trish, you got that right?
So now we have to make a motion,
To
so that was to
sunset.
add it to the agenda. So now I'd like to make a motion to sunset the shared services advisory group effective immediately.
Second.
Second.
Oh, Ally second. All right. You did the motion.
Oh, okay, sure. Any discussion?
I will just say, it also takes me longer to actually figure out who's still around in the
Right.
same spots than it does to actually have these meetings, and the meetings don't really go anywhere because they can't make their own decisions without the boards. So
Right.
I think this is the right thing to do. I forgot to say that earlier.
All in favor?
Aye.
It's all clear.
Trish, you got all that?
Sorry, Trish.
She's got it, she's got it.
Thank you. All right. Dr. Baird, you are right. I thought it was just pre-K discussion. I didn't realize it was on here like this. Okay.
Good team.
Yes, we are. All right, so the next item is old business, so discussion and possible action regarding a supplemental appropriation for preschool. So as I mentioned earlier, we got the letter saying it was too early to ask. So at this point, I'd be asking that we resubmit a request for a supplemental appropriation from the Board of Finance on July 1st, 2022, in the amount of $252,372 for the purpose of accommodating an increase in preschool student enrollment for the 2022-2023 school year. Can I have that motion? Did I say motion?
I'm so moved every single, all right, so moved. Come on, guys, wake up.
Second.
All right.
Sorry, next time we'll
I
go.
didn't know if you.
You're right
yeah, I
there,
wasn't
so I
sure.
look at you. All right, Ally or Diana, whoever, who wants it?
Doesn't matter.
All right.
That's fine.
You want it?
Yeah.
Oh, Ally, all right. We're gonna do Ally seconded.
Okay. Amanda made the motion, right?
Amanda made the motion. I guess I could make my own, anyway. Is there any discussion? So I'm just going to basically resubmit the same letter with a new date.
Yeah.
And then as soon as they put it on their agenda, they have like 30 days to make a decision. They did ask that we submit it to the town manager per charter, so I will do that, but I probably will still copy the chair of the Board of Finance, and obviously our board.
Are you still gonna have everybody sign it, or is it just gonna come from you?
No, I think the
We
same
already
letter.
signed, all of us signed
Yeah,
it
I
last
think
time.
the exact same letter with a new date, July 1.
I will send you some, I'll send you a revised copy.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? All right, motion passes unanimously. New business.
I have something that I'd like to
propose for new business. You know, given recent discussions and recent events, I'd like us to have a discussion about SRO program enhancement to consider expanding the SRO program.
Okay. I would like to have that on there. I know that's something that we initially wanted, and then we kind of, and I think, again, the town's ARPA funds could potentially fund a year of that position and then give it time to be budgeted for as well, so.
We could do that at the retreat as part of this, as a separate agenda item, but on the same night, we talk about the district advancement plan.
Yeah, that sounds good, let's have it on there.
That would fit in with that, I think.
Yeah, great.
Thank you. Just a question, is it appropriate, so I know usually our retreats, we don't have any guests, but is it appropriate to, I know like only certain things we can do in executive session, is security of our school executive session. I just wouldn't want anyone to hear.
So
you
we
know.
can't discuss publicly like what, everything that we have in place, because obviously that would
Right.
take away the security of our school.
Right, that's
But
what
we
I'm thinking,
can just talk
executive.
about like having an additional
Okay.
presence, you
I just wanna
know.
make sure we're cautious.
Yeah, I
of
agree, no, that's a
safety.
good point.
I
No,
think
that's
right
excellent.
now, the only thing, for the retreat that would be executive session would be my, evaluation. I
Okay.
think all the other things would be an open session.
Yeah, as long as you think it's safe.
Yeah, I wouldn't
Yeah,
get
I
into
think-
details of what we have in place by any
Right.
means, yeah, no. Yeah, no, that's an excellent point. All right, great. Board member comments.
I just have one, as I make the same one every single year, we made it through the year. And it seems, you know, like these past few years have been like this with COVID, and just really how, like, I'm really happy where the board is, like, we've had a very strong year as a board coming together, and I think that's great. Just, there were, you know, reports that were given tonight, it just really shows how much the principals put into everything, and the teachers, and of course, you know, Dr. Briere, with everything with special needs. So just thank you for everything you guys do. I know we say it all the time that we appreciate you, but we can't not say at the last meeting of the school year. So thank you. We did it. You made it.
6 more days.
Yes.
Yes, and shout out to the sixth graders, I mean, you know, I'm being personal because, you know, my kid's sixth grader, but for the promotion ceremony on June 17th. All right. Any other board member comments? All right. So the next item I would like to actually propose for executive session. I would like to ask for a motion to enter into executive session now at 8:20 p.m. for the purposes of discussing attorney-client privilege information, and may invite the superintendent, Dr. Baird, to attend portions of the session.
So moved.
Okay.
All right. Amanda and Ally, you guys are on fire tonight. Any discussion? All right, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? All right, so we are in executive session at 8:28 p.m. Should we go to room 3?
Yeah.
All right, so I would like to declare us out of executive session at 8:57 PM. I would like to ask for a motion to add an agenda item, discussion and possible action concerning a proposed letter to send to a Board of Finance member.
Second.
All right, Tana moved. Ally seconds. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions? All right, great, motion passes. And now I would, in regard to that agenda item, I would like to ask for a motion concerning a proposed letter to be sent to the Board of Finance member early next week. Motion. All right. Nikki Matthews makes a motion. Alex seconds. Any discussion?
Can you just read the language to me, please? Just so I can have it for Trish.
I just asked for a motion to send the proposed letter to the Board of Finance member early next week. On behalf of the board. I should add that. Or from the board. Sorry.
I'm just going to read it back to you. Motion to send the proposed letter to the Board of Finance member from the board.
From the Board of Education, yep. Good. All right, any discussion?
No.
Nope.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes unanimously.
Who was the second to the motion?
Alex.
Okay, thank you.
Nikki and Alex.
Okay.
All right. And I will ask for a motion to adjourn. I don't have to, but I was told like it's better to do that. So do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting at 8:59 PM? All right, Alex moved, Diana seconds. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? All right, we are adjourned. Thank you very much.